Welcome, everybody. I'm Leisha Kaczynskis with Rochester Software Associates, probably the only one who can say my last name. You're at the Golden Implant Idea panel session. We're going to have some fun today, as you know, with a lot of the things that I do. We're going to cover 4 topics today: new technology, business management, workforce change management, relevancy, and then if we have time, we'll have a Q&A at the end. So we have 3 panelists, and I will go from my left, or my right to my left here. First, we have Chris Reed. He's actually a first-timer here, so I talked him into this. Chris is the Director of Materials Management with Orange County Public Schools, Florida, not California. He's a retired U.S. Army officer with over 26 years of leadership experience in operations and logistics within the private and the public sector. He's been with Orange County Public Schools for over 3 years. He has a direct oversight of printing, production, and MFP program, mail and courier services, supply, and surplus operations, as well as records and forms management. So he's actually a level above the print center manager. Their district generates $2.5 million in revenue. He manages a $4.5 million MFD program. Sarah, who manages it, is here with him. They have over 23,000 employees, 200,000 students, and 200 schools. They're, I think, 7th or 8th largest school district in the U.S.?
8th now.
8th largest. So their delivery area is 1,000 square miles. So he's definitely interested in some delivery kind of solutions. To his immediate left is Katherine Chambers, another person who doesn't really need an introduction. She has an MED and a CASP. She's Director of Print and Mail Services with Alfred State College. She has 27 years of experience directing print, publishing, mail, and document management facilities in the educational sector, both K-12 and higher ed. She has a master's in higher education administration from Penn State. She's certified as an NACAS and is a certified auxiliary services professional. And then to her left, I've got some stats. 2.5 million impressions a year. They sort and distribute 28,000 student packages annually. They aren't near much for shopping, so you'll hear talk a little bit about some of the packages that they deliver because it's a huge part of their business. They process, prepare, sort, and mail 750,000 pieces of permit mail annually. They have 4 employees, including Catherine. They have 2 mailroom employees and a 3/4-time full-time student. Part of their shared services initiative is maintaining web-based storefronts for 5 different colleges. And then to her left, we have, and Michael, I should have verified your last name.
Yes. No,
Michael Srezbek. Serpek, there we go. He's the manager of University Printing, University of Delaware. And Michael's been the manager of University Printing for the last 2 years. He has over 28 years of print experience, ranging from fine art to commercial to educational printing. He holds degrees from the University of Iowa and the School of Visual Arts. Their operation has $2.3 million in revenue. The staff is 12 of full-time and 3 part-time. They have about 9,000 unique invoices in 2017. For those of you just coming in, if you want to grab a book, there's some in the back here. And so the idea that I mentioned earlier with some of the folks that are getting some more out is that they've each submitted a bunch of ideas. They're going to choose one in each of the 4 topics that they're going to talk about. And they'll have about 3 minutes to discuss those ideas. So we'll time them fairly strictly. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to talk about is new technology. And we will start first with Chris.
So before I start, I have to say that my expectations was only about maybe 10 people, given it that we were going against Howie. So I can only assume it's standing room only over there, because this is a great amount of people. So thanks for joining us. So new technology. New technology is great, and it's good and bad. So it brings a myriad of problems. But if you look at it from a project management standpoint, you can break it down into smaller parts. So what we do when we bring in new technology, we just recently switched out our production devices as well as brought in web CRD. We had very detailed project plans. So we had a defined scope, a defined cost, and a schedule. And the schedule was important because when we first started off, we didn't go on schedule as planned. And it allowed us the opportunity to come up with a contingency plan, which was to bring in another contractor to help us out with staying on schedule. So that was important. But within that schedule, we set milestones, and we clearly saw within the first couple of months we were going to fail. So having that defined set of scope and schedule enabled us to stay on course, and we completed what we wanted within a couple months of our intended time frame. So along with that, we also can make some assumptions. And with assumptions, sometimes you also don't define all of the unknowns. So with having a good defined set of scope, you can then incorporate those unknowns as they come at you. Finally, the most important piece is it keeps us organized, and it gives us a communication plan. The communication plan goes both ways, downward to our employees, but also, more importantly, to our executive staff. So now our senior leadership is involved in what's going on, and they know whether or not we're on schedule or not.
Great.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about how to engage employees in a technology change. So I've been at Alfred State. This is my 5th year. And 5 years before I got there, some of the employees had already been through a major change where they went from offset technology to the use of an iGen. And so our iGen was near end of life. And I knew that during that 5-year period that we had the iGen, technology had greatly improved. And so we sat down together and made a plan of what we wanted, how we wanted the equipment to perform, what we wanted it to do. We looked at what the iGen could do, and everybody knows it's got a larger sheet size, along with some other vendors. But we talked about how we were going to scale back and move to a 1319 cut sheet size. We made lists of what we wanted it to do, what we wanted to be improved on the iGen, and we do a lot of variable data, and we do print for 5 other institutions as well as the county in which we live. So we made those lists. Some of us went to Print 17, Graph Expo. We looked at equipment there, and then when we got back to the office after attending Graph Expo, I began sending them out. And so I would send, we don't have very many of them, so the 3 main players I sent to, they went to Ricoh, they went to a Ricoh install, and they went to the Ricoh sales room. They went to Xerox, went to Canon, went and saw the Konica Minolta devices, and we compared all of those. And for each visit, they took the exact same files that we had problems reproducing the way we wanted to on the iGen. Grays are very difficult. We had some really fine screens and lines, and so they brought those back. We ran them exactly the same way on exactly the same sheet. We took our own paper, and then when we came back, we were able to make a decision. For me, doing it that way, I had a pretty good idea of where we were headed, but to allow them to buy into that, especially with my iGen operator, who really, we're in Xerox territory, so Xerox is pretty much king there. And so I had to make sure that he was convinced that another piece of equipment could perform the job. So I highly recommend that for staff, to get staff buy-in, to let them participate in the decision.
Want to pass the mic down to Michael?
Pass the mic. All right. You'll have to excuse me. I'm getting over a sinus infection. Not that everyone needs to know that. Never mind. Forget what I just said. So when I took the position at the University of Delaware, in retrospect, this should have scared me a lot more than it did at the time, but I took the job sight unseen. No one thought to bring me over to the facility. I had to catch a plane. It was a very sort of odd situation. So I had to hit the ground running. I sat down and I had to basically assess what the core of the business was, and I had to learn that very, very quickly. So at the time, we were doing almost a 60-40 digital to offset. Right now, it's probably more 70-30. And we had some aging digital equipment that was past its life, past its lease term, past everything. I'm surprised they were even working. There was literally duct tape wrapped around our iGen 3. So the first thing we did was we brought in the new iGen, an iGen 5 with the 5th color housing. UD blue is notoriously hard to reproduce, so with that blue color housing, we were able to get it right on, especially with the fiery Nuvera. And there was also, we brought our Nuvera. And we also saw at that point there was a need for a light production device, because if the Nuvera if the iGen went down, We were literally dead in the water, so we brought in a Versant, which has been really popular. I think it was really important at the time to listen to my employees. I had access to numbers and I had access to some history, but as I think it's been said several times in many other sessions, I mean, they're the ones that are working with the equipment. They're the ones that are seeing most of the jobs, so I had to sit down and really listen to them, and they had some great insights. And then really, like, where's your business lagging, and where are your pinch points? We had UD has a great need for signage, but we were using an old solvent printer, and we were making Coroplast signs, with adhesive vinyl and sticking them to way too many pinch points. So we brought in a UV hybrid flatbed and roll-to-roll, and that has allowed us to increase our signage business by about 400%. It's a huge money generator. The time frame is significantly smaller. And the ink costs on those things are literally nothing. I feel like I'm talking directly to you. I'm sorry. Hey, how's it going? So anyway, it's been an exciting ride, but really listening to my employees and figuring out what the core of the business has been the most important aspect for bringing in the new technology.
Great. Pass the mic back up. One thing that struck me when I was working with the three of these, they're what I would consider probably the new breed of manager. All of them came into a shop that really needed to kind of come up to the next level, regenerate. Both Chris and Katherine are very process-driven, much about measurement and reporting. Michael is too, but he's more of like the human side of it. So I just think it's there'll be a lot of good stuff that you'll learn from them. So one of the topics that doesn't get touched on a lot, it's been talked about a little bit here in the conference, is around business management. We'll start with Chris again, and he talks a little bit about some of the processes they use.
So first off, I'll disclose that our operations division and our HR department both participate in a consortium with the state of Florida. Back when Lawton Childs was a governor back in the late 70s, early 80s, he recognized early on that government was not very good. They're not very organized or very process-driven. So he created this council called the Florida Sterling Council. And it's a set of criteria in which to evaluate your entire organization against. So it's very process-driven, but it's very systematic. It ties all together from leadership to operations into the support, workforce management, how you communicate. It's a plethora of different things, but there's a thread that ties everything together. That model is actually based off of the national one, which I'm not sure if anybody's ever heard of, but Malcolm Baldrige model. So if anybody is looking to really bring the standard of processes up, and it's regardless of your industry, so it's industry indiscriminate. It's based off of the processes, and there is no right or wrong. So what I'm about to cover, this is what we do at Orange County Public Schools. Others do other things, and they still may meet the same criteria. And I'm also a Florida Sterling examiner, too. So I also have the opportunity to see how other industries like small business manufacturing does the same thing outside of print and what we do at the district. So for Orange County Public Schools, we start off with a 5-year strategy. We're actually in year 4 of our strategy. And with that strategy, we set a set of objectives. So in 5 years, where do we want to be? In some cases, it may be our KPIs we want to improve, or it may be project-driven or whatever. So those objectives are established, and then we actually state how we're going to achieve those objectives, and then we measure those. And we measure those on a monthly basis and a quarterly basis. So along with that, we also use a tool for continuous improvement. It's called Plan, Do, Check, Act. So you plan it out. You're actually going to do or execute it. Then you check to see how well you're doing. And then the act part is you can now adjust accordingly if you're on track or if you're not, to get it back on track. Along with those other business management principles we do, every year we have a SWOT that we update. And our Lunch and Learn the other day, they made mention of your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and the threats. And those threats could change from year to year, such as like an outsourcing. Opportunities, I can tell you this weekend has been a great opportunity for me to see opportunities that I can bring in to our print shop. So this was wonderful that for that opportunity, I will then apply it at the starting next, when I get back, because I have to update my SWOT for the next fiscal year. My fiscal year ends at the end of this month. So along with that, we do environmental benchmarking. So we benchmark ourselves against other similar industries. We have our KPIs, our marketing plan, and then finally, I think what's really important is our reviews. We do monthly reviews. I do them as a director with my direct reports, and then so they get direct feedback from me. And then every quarter, we do a review with our executive leadership. So my senior director, as well as the COO, gets to review all of my work, and then any guidance that they provide, they would then send that down to me. So by the time we get to the end of the fiscal year, there shouldn't be any surprise. So two of our objectives is, one is increase our revenue, so they already know where I'm at before we even end the fiscal year, and the other one is to increase our customer satisfaction. And they tie into each other. And it's that how part within inside the objectives of how we're going to achieve those numbers and measure it that makes it really a 360-degree success from a business management standpoint.
Thanks, Chris. Katherine?
So we too use various business management tools. Anytime you go into a new shop, there's usually some cleanup you need to do. I think we heard someone yesterday talk about lean manufacturing tools such as the 5S tool, which is sort, set in order, shine, standardize, and sustain, and we've been really successful at that. I guess the thing I want to talk about the most is kind of what Howie touched on this morning, and that is you need to measure what you manage and report what you measure. And more than that, make sure that what you report to your supervisor and to your leadership team is what they want to hear. You need to use the data that you collect to manage your people, your purchases, your services, and to help you with planning. I do a monthly report for my boss, and it includes statistics. It includes a list of important things that I accomplished during the past month. I am asked to look for new customers, and so I try to report on which new customer I went out to do. I do make sales calls. Recently, one of the things that was on the report was completed training in the 9110. We've also put in a couple of other pieces of equipment, so how that's going with the staff. And then statistics. So I report revenues based on shared services. The State University of New York has what's called a shared services system. Many of you are also hear the word shared services. And the only service that Alfred State can contribute to the SUNY system is printing. You know, we're 45 miles away from everywhere. So we have a pretty good base of printing in the Western New York area where we maintain storefronts for 5 different institutions. I also do a business plan. It contains a SWOT analysis. It contains our goals for the next year, progress towards the last goals. We talk about environmental threats and opportunities. And I turn that in every year. And like he said, I'll be going back and finishing that plan.
I won't talk about business plans. I have one, but it's all the same stuff. I want to talk a little bit more about balancing operations versus production. I take a somewhat, a holistic approach to that balance. I firmly believe that although an implant produces a product, it really is a living and breathing entity. And like any other creature, it requires constant checks and fixes to maintain that health. And to optimize your production, it's imperative to optimize your operation as well. I don't know about your guys' shops, but in my shop, operation and production can almost constantly seem at odds. Production blames the office, and the office blames production for errors. So I found simply that constant communication is key. Facilitate the conversation between production staff and the operations staff. When someone comes to complain to me, which is sadly on an almost daily basis, explain to them what's going on, kind of get into everybody's mind, and really just help the process along. Otherwise, they're just going to gossip and complain about each other, and production will come to a standstill. Find the path of least resistance in your workflow, which I think is common sense. Reduce touch points. The less staff has to touch an incoming order, the less staff questions will be on the production floor, and the less the front office has to go in and talk to them. And quite simply, nurture a welcoming environment. Like it or not, we spend more time with our employees and our businesses than we do at home with our families. So create a workplace environment that's effective as well as pleasant. Give operations and production staff the tools and the knowledge not only to perform their job, but to understand their fellow colleagues. And that sort of environment will come into its own. And I've seen results. I mean, my staff has worked together in some cases for 20 years, but with any family that's been together, there can be quite a bit of bickering. So I've seen the change, and it's been an interesting process.
Thanks. The next one's an interesting one. Chris brought it up, I think, on one of the first calls that we had. He said, workforce change management. And I said, we're going to have to explain what that is, because I don't know if anybody's going to get what that is. They've all driven tremendous amount of change in their organizations. So I think Chris can talk to us a little bit about that and some of the things that he's doing.
So it's actually kind of a good lead-in from what Michael left off on as far as the behaviors and so forth. And that's really what change management is. It's the change of behaviors. And I've only been with the district for about 3 years, but the staff has been there on average about 25 years. So a new guy comes in, and now he wants to change everything. And before we actually got to the change, I did an assessment, and I looked at the equipment, I looked at the staff itself, and then looked at the opportunities that we had in front of us in which to get us to where we needed to get to. What we did know was volume was decreasing. So part of this evolution of change management was having to do a complete review of everything that we looked at. And so equipment ended up getting changed out, and that in turn brought in well, how are we going to train our folks? How are we going to reduce that anxiety of now I have to learn something new? We've had Xerox machines for 15 years, and now we're bringing in Canon. How are we going to do it? So human behavior is a big component of it. And Harvard Business Review has done a lot of different articles on change management if you really want to get into some details. But generally speaking, we fall into 3 different groups. And it really just depends on your personality and how you come across it. So one group is everybody's great on change, and I am a person who loves change. So I'm very eager to dive into it. There's another group that not so hesitant. It's kind of like my wife. My wife is very hesitant sometimes, so she has to have more data to get herself moved into that other group. And then there's that other group that really doesn't like that change at all, and they actually are willing to move to a different direction. So from my standpoint, the focus is really the people are in the middle. I want to convince them to bring them over. And generally speaking, there are a lot of good people in that group that you don't want to lose. So you have to strike that balance. But that human behavior is a really key component to it. So what we found is not only did we have to change some of our staff, but we also had to add in some. We were very focused on production, but not so much on the business side. So what I found is we needed to check into quality. So we brought in a quality assurance person to establish a program there. We also added in a finance manager to help us focus on our numbers so we could actually make them. We found over about a 3-year period that not only was the volume decreasing, but we were also landing in the red. And if we're a P&L, it is vital for us to be in the black. So those extra people allowed production to focus on production and business entity folks to focus on that part. So along with having that strategy map that I talked about before, that enabled us to still continue with our key KPIs, having our measurable objectives that were still objectives that we had, but also focus on those other changes and Interestingly enough, I reflected back on the article I read about change management with Harvard Business Review, and everybody pretty much behaved exactly the way they predicted everybody to do. In the end, when I look back, I pretty much defined change management is simply management, and management is change management. It is just how we manage peoples and processes and equipment. It's as simple as that. It's not really that different. You're labeling it with some words.
So usually when you want to make a change, and I guess I fall into the first category he described. I don't mind change, but I also have been through several shops where I know I have to take it baby steps. So when I know I want to make a change, change management theory teaches you that you should state the change you want to make. You start talking about it long before you make the change. And you talk about it in what-if terms. What if we didn't have an iGen? What if we couldn't afford it? What if we bought this other piece of equipment and changed that process? So when communicating a change to your staff and then to your customers, the best way to do it is to state the change and then state how that change is going to affect that person, that team, and then how it's going to impact the organization. Why is it good? Why is it necessary? And then restate the change again. And in conjunction with that, always have, I try to have what I call scripts available for, especially the major changes I've made since being there is just improving workflows and some work processes. One of which was in our package tracking process. I could not believe the number of packages that we receive at Alfred, and the lack of we had a piece of software, but we didn't have mobile devices to scan it, so it was just we were going back and forth on ourselves and trying to get that workflow. So we made some changes to that, and we wrote scripts to help for the employees to use to explain to students why we're not doing something a certain way that they've always done it that way. Employees are also, once we've made the change and gotten the new workflow down pat, we need to write a standard operating procedure for it, and we call them SOPs. We're a small staff. If I'm out this week, that affects, if other people are sick, that affects them. So anyone can write an SOP. And at the beginning, that wasn't a very popular thing to do. I ended up writing many of them. But just before I left, it warms my heart. I heard one of my employees say, "We need an SOP for that." And so she wrote one and then shared it, and we have this book that they go in so that no matter who's out, we can carry on that piece of work or that workflow. So communication is important, and I think empowering the employees is important in change management.
I love change. Change is good. In my situation, when I took over at University of Delaware, I was the newest employee. I have employees that have been there for 20 years, 25 plus years. I have one employee that this is the only job she's ever had in her entire life. She's 44. She's eligible for a University of Delaware pension next year. So I thought it would be prudent not to go in and shake up the system right away. I took a little time to take a step back, meet everybody, learn about the school, and then I changed everything. And took that time to formulate a 3-month plan, a 1-year plan, and a 5-year plan. I wanted my staff to trust me, that I was there for them. I had the staff and the facility's best interests in mind. I've been in positions where someone came in and just started changing things just for the heck of it, just because they could and because they wanted to prove that they were the manager, and it was an unpleasant situation. And we've seen some pretty decent results. But occasionally, it's appropriate to burn a system down and begin anew. So after these 2 years, we've learned the systems, and now we're breaking them down and starting fresh in a lot of situations, because as you can imagine, after 20, 30 years, it's just system upon system upon system upon system. There's the answer quite often is, why are we doing it this way? That's the way we've always done it. So we're trying to get over that hump, but at this point, my employees are starting to see the benefit. Their lives are getting easier. our turnaround times are getting quicker. We're seeing results from our clients saying how much just more efficient things seem to be. So the change is working. Start slow, burn everything down.
I thought that was great. It was such a contrast, right? Go slow. Wait, no, burn everything down. So we got to talk about that. Last topic is relevancy. I know it gets discussed fairly often, but I think it's always a good one. Everybody has kind of a unique point. We'll start again with Chris.
Yeah, that was a kind of one I had to take a step back and think about as far as relevancy, but the way I kind of look at it, at least with Orange County Public Schools, trying to remain relevant. So with Orange County Public Schools, we have 208,000 students, and the district about 6 or 7 years ago decided that they were going to commit to going to a digital curriculum. I sit here today saying that every high school and every middle school is a 1-to-1 ratio of laptop to child. That's pretty significant. It also has had a very significant impact on printing within our district, as you can assume. So I would say that remaining relevant is adapting to that, the market changes and the way the district is working. Working towards that partnership with the digital curriculum. Well, that's not just the print shop, but we're actually a partner of them, and we work collectively together on, so when they make a change, we can adapt with them. So that market change, we're trying to stay ahead of that curve, so we're not so reactive, but we're more proactive in working collectively together. The other part of remaining relevancy I look at is remaining relevant with your staff. So as we bring in new devices, we have to continue to train and reinvest. I've heard a lot of people say over the weekend this past week about people and workforce engagement. I know without a doubt that regardless of the equipment that we have or the size of the building, no matter how big or small it is, no matter what tool we use, none of that matters unless we take care of our people. So I'm very much into taking care of our staff. If we take care of the staff takes care of leadership, and it's a win-win across the board. But you have to be sincere about it as well. So remaining relevant and making sure that they are keeping up with the training and industry standards is huge. So increasing their knowledge, their skills, and their abilities for us to be able to adapt to that ever-changing market. And then, of course, as we change with bringing in those other opportunities, that we have to be open enough to say, well, we used to do just the print. Maybe we have to get into graphic arts. Maybe there's other opportunities that exist, and we have to be open to that so we can all continue to grow together. So when I stop and I take a look back in the rearview mirror, I kind of really just look at that relevancy is just simply adapting to an ever-changing landscape. And we clearly are changing a lot with Orange County Public Schools.
Thanks, Katherine.
So I report directly to admissions, and as such, being in the printing department, we contribute directly to recruiting students. And so some of the things I report back to show our relevancy to the institution is we participate in what's known as the admissions progression. And most colleges and universities have this, where we buy some names and then we begin a progression. And we mail a trigger piece to probably 80,000 names. If a prospective recruit comes in and hits the website or does some more things, then we begin that progression. And we mail out about 80,000 view books. One of the few schools that still mail view books. The view book is personalized, and for us, variable data is much more than the address, although it does have the address on it. It has a personal story, a picture, variable photos, variable colors. It has in-state or out-of-state tuition based on the address information that was provided to us. And that begins in July. We start mailing those out. So once we mail the trigger piece, then we do the view books, and that just continues. That cycle continues for about 9 months. And in the state of New York, like many states except for California and Texas, we're seeing a decline in the number of high school students that are going to college. We're an aging state, and there's just not enough students to go around, and so we're all competing for the same students. So on my reports, I report how I contributed to the college's recruitment process. I also report when we're having a fundraising campaign. I report how we contributed to that, and we do most of the printing for Alfred State. There's only 2 things we purchase. I've brought it all back in. We still print a student catalog, and that's like a web-based printer, so we buy that, and one other tri-folded piece that's just for us to print all the other stuff. It's better to buy that, and I buy that. But I report that back directly in my monthly reports, and then once a year I look at all of my reports that I've done, and I pick out the really nice things from those reports, and I put it in my report to the President's Council and to what's kind of like our trustees. And so they see what we're doing. And this is really the first place I've ever worked where the President actually knows I have it in iGen, and how's the iGen running, Katherine, and it's pretty special that he knows that.
Great.
I can pretty much honestly say that our president does not know I have an iGen, even though he signed the order. At the University of Delaware, there's no mandate to utilize our facility. I'm sure a lot of implants have that same situation. So on a daily basis, I have to define what relevancy is to our university and how to be relevant. So I've come up with a couple processes. I think one of the most important thing I do as a manager, and what we do is we have a willingness to create a job at a loss, and I'm not saying a massive loss, but what differentiates us from a commercial printer is we can take a little extra time. We can lose a little paper. I don't have the same overage costs as a commercial printer, so we can put in that extra time. A perfect example is we have a new campaign, the Delaware First campaign. Their goal is to raise a ridiculous amount of money by 2019. So they changed all the graphics, and they created a pretty complex design for their business cards that the designer quite obviously had never designed for print before, and it had hundreds of layers and gradients, and it was really one of the most ridiculous files I've ever seen in my life. Almost unreproducible, the way it was created. So we took some time. We tried it out offset. We tried it out on the iGen. I spent hours and hours just sitting with the file, trying to get what they wanted, and we sent them maybe 20 different versions. I don't know any other commercial printer that would have done that without charging. But ultimately, this is for the admissions department. This is for the alumni relations. They're one of our biggest customers, and because of that, they send all the work to us. We've created more revenue. So that willingness to take that loss and spend extra time is really what defines what sets us apart from the local printers. I'm sure everybody says this, but we really need to be brand champions. University of Delaware, again, we're going through a rebranding period, which is going to be great for my revenue for next year, but that's neither here nor there. Not only do we have to monitor brand compliance, but we have to champion its use. We spend a lot of time explaining to our customers why you want to be brand compliant, why does it matter to the university, and our marketing department definitely appreciates that. Of course, I tried to explain to them the other day that people will still send something out if we tell them they can't have it, but that's a whole nother argument. And then, most importantly, be visible. I sort of semi-quoted Andy Warhol, go to all the parties, meetings. Our facility is on campus, but it's way on the sort of edge of campus. And although we have parking, not a lot of people come down there. So I make a point to go to everything. I go to every design meeting I possibly can go to. I go to student organizations. Anytime I hear of a meeting, I go to it. I bring samples. I bring cards. I bring magnets. I quite honestly probably get a little annoying. But if I'm not out there every day, reminding people that we exist, and I still to this day, I'll talk to someone and I hear, I didn't know you were there. I didn't know university printing still existed. We've been there for 50 years, and it drives me crazy. So just get out there and and look people in the eye, and don't give them an excuse not to print in your facility.
Thanks, Michael. So the book is available for download on our website. The URL is here. It's actually in the front of the book, too. As I mentioned, there's over 30-plus ideas. This is, I think, the 5th year that I've done it. So we've got, gosh, probably 200 different ideas from a bunch of different implants. I've picked on a whole lot of people.